The Concourt is going to hear two challenges next week to the Electoral Amendment Act. And we all need to pay very close attention to this, knowing the elections are just around the corner. Well, they're next year, but they're basically around the corner. Now, the first issue involves the threshold set for independent candidates to enter the elections, to actually get into the elections. How does that even work? While the other is dealing with the number of seats available to the independent candidates in the National Assembly. So obviously, if you are an independent candidate coming in, you get enough votes, that will then affect how many seats you get in the National Assembly. So very important issues the Concourt's going to have to deal with. NGO, Rivonia Circle, has been admitted as a friend of the court. The organisation's Tessa joining us here on the show to talk about it. Tessa, morning to you. Let's go step by step here, shall we? Let's start with the first one, the threshold set for independent candidates to enter the elections. What's the issue there? What's the concern? Morning.
Morning. And that's actually the point in which we come in as amicus. So what the Electoral Amendment Bill at this point says is that the threshold for signatures and the money that independent candidates and anyone, even new parties, coming into contest that aren't in Parliament, that will be higher than it's been before. So before you needed 500,000 rand and you need 1,000 signatures in order to get onto the ballot. That has now been lifted, and we suspect that the final number around that for the IEC is going to be at about 750,000 rand. But the big issue actually before the court is the question of signatures, because the signatures have been raised to a percentage that amounts to about 15,000 signatures that will be required now to new political parties entering into the space to contest or for independents entering. And so Parliament's reasoning around this is that independent candidates haven't proven their constituencies, while parties have proven their constituencies. However, that's creating an imbalance in the contest, because Parliament has also created a very, very odd set of circumstances where they've put independent candidates on the same ballot as parties.
Right.
And by doing that, you're saying that we're competing as equals.
But you're not.
But you're not.
You're not really, no.
You're not really, especially for parties that are in Parliament, and that's where we've come in particularly, because this doesn't apply to parties that are in Parliament. If you're in Parliament, you don't have to apply to the new regulations. Yet, if you're coming in and contesting to be in Parliament for the first time as an independent, then you need to apply to these new regulations.
And obviously, from what I'm hearing, Rivonia Circle, it doesn't agree with the increase in money, doesn't agree with the increase in signatures. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it's not only about the increase in signatures being a problem. It's really about how that impacts on fairness. And so the first point of fairness is that it doesn't apply to everyone that will contest. Sure. Because once you have a seat, you don't have the same conditions that you're contesting against.
It's becoming a locked door.
Right, it's becoming a locked door. It's a gatekeeping mechanism for those in power already to try and gatekeep people out of power. But also by raising those thresholds, the signatures is not just go and find random signatures. It's find signatures that you can verify, signatures that are of people who are already registered and that you can confirm are registered. You need to make sure that each of those signatures come with people's ID numbers, and those are all correct. What you're doing is you're asking an individual person to go out there without any infrastructure to go and collect and do a bureaucratic task that a party like the ANC only needed to get 1,000 of, and that was already onerous and a measure to make sure they were serious. Why would an independent candidate need to prove their seriousness 15 times over?
I suppose one could also contend, though, that if you are an independent candidate coming in, the opposite of this could be true, where if you want to run and you're not even able to prove 15,000 signatures and raise that kind of money, why are you running in a political game already? I suppose there could be a credibility issue here if you can't even get that right as an independent candidate. I'm going to call them ICs from now on, but it's clumsy to keep saying. If you can't prove it as an IC, why should you even be in the elections?
Well, I think the question is then, why were we happy with 1,000 signatures before?
Right. Okay. It's the change of the regulations.
Exactly. If 1,000 signatures was good enough to prove that for parties that are governing, why is it so different now? And you have to think about how onerous that administrative task is, because you're also doing it within the electoral period. So you can't just take signatures you got 3 years ago and use those signatures. You need to do it in quite a rapid space of time. And so having the infrastructure, because you're not just collecting those signatures. I mean, The difficulty around it, for example, is if somebody walked up to you and said, you know, you are a supporter of Party X, please give me your ID number.
Right.
You're asking for a lot of things in terms of people's trust, all of those things.
Which people already don't want to give up.
Exactly.
I want to ask this, but I do want to talk to you about the number of seats available. I just want to make sure I've got this right in my head. So could this be a case of if the new regulations were applied to everybody, even those in Parliament, the parties already, would you be happy with that?
Well, that would be the first step. And that's the important one that we're asking for, is fair treatment across all parties. And the question is, why are those other parties not willing to sign up to these new regulations? Because they know how onerous it is. Right. That's the thing. They're trying. It's the turkeys voting for Christmas, and so they're voting in their own favour, and they're deciding that actually it's going to be the chickens that fry and not them.
I haven't heard that saying in years. Sorry, forgive the laugh. I haven't heard that saying in years, and it's so applicable as well. Tessa, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly what Rivonia Circle is wanting on the threshold for candidates. I don't mean to rush you on this last one. It is my fault. I spent too much time on the first part. Just can we talk seats quickly and availability? What's the issue there?
Again, because parties and individuals, and remember when I say parties and individuals on the same list, it means that when the ANC is sitting there and Gareth is sitting there, the ANC has a list of 200 to 400 people that are contesting against one person. So the ANC will get the value of all of the votes allotted to them. If the ANC gets 100,000 votes, they would get 2 seats.
Yes.
If an independent candidate got 200,000 votes, they would get 1 seat.
Right, so the proportional representation is out.
And so to balance that out, what the bill says right now is only independent candidates will only be eligible for 200 of the 400 seats in Parliament. To balance that out, the Independent Candidates Association is saying, let them contest for more seats. Allow independent candidates to contest for the 350 seats in Parliament rather than only the 200, to balance out the fact that they are already competing on a steeper hill than parties are.
It's almost getting off to a start in a horse race where the gate hasn't opened on time and you're expected to catch up.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm with you now. I get it. But it is complicated, and I'm glad you came in to talk to us. Tessa, I hope we talk again, because I think for this kind of voter education, as well ahead of the elections, are going to be so very, very important.
And just one more thing, Gareth. Why this is important is we're going to change the way we vote substantially.
Absolutely.
Where we would have had 2 ballots before, we're now going to be voting on 3 different ballots, and we must know what those ballots are and what they mean. And that's why it's important for us to get this right now.
Absolutely.
Because if this is unconstitutional now, and people don't know what they're voting for, if we have a challenge to this election afterwards, we will have a challenge that says this election is unconstitutional, and that will be a threat to democracy.
It absolutely would. It really would. But it's already confusing to follow at the best of times. Now we're adding all of this in, which is, I agree with you 100%. We've got to make sure it's constitutionally correct before we head to the polls. Tessa, thank you. I think you've made a very, very complicated issue actually quite easy to understand. It's actually not difficult now that she explained it to me. I hope you followed that as well. Tessa Dooms from Rivonia Circle. They're very active on social and online. I'm sure you can get more information on this. Simply go and Google Rivonia Circle. My thanks to Tessa for coming in.